if you have a fuel temp sensor and you're going to change it, this would be the time.
You'll note a difference in the bolts that hold the top cover on and the lower cover. The lower quantity adjuster body has a captive washer and is quite a bit longer. So keep those separate. And adjust them out. I'm going to have another little splash here when this comes out. Okay, so we've got the quantity adjuster just sitting over here to the side. This doesn't want to stay out of the way, so we're just going to put a zip tie through it. It's just going to stay out of our way.
So now we have good access to see inside the guts of the pump.
Now you can make an extraordinary mess doing this job
if you don't pull the fuel out of the body of the pump.
So I'm going to take this and make sure the hose on the end of your Mighty Vac is nice and clean, because it's going to go inside the pump. And you can get this down between the springs and the plunger. You have to push the control collar out of the way a little bit, and you'll probably get about 1.5 of these cups of diesel. And you can go dump this right back in your tank or just in an old used oil container.
The plunger control collar right here, this controls fueling of the pump. It slides back and forth on the plunger, and this controls a motor rod. And that motor rod sits inside, the tip of it sits inside the control collar down there. You can see the hole right there. You always want to make sure that's facing up when you go to put the quantity adjuster back on. And if it doesn't engage that, the car might start and might run, but you won't be able to throttle it at all because you won't have any control of the collar.
Let's get the rest of the fuel out of here. This is going to save you quite a bit of mess in your driveway if you are able to get this out.
Now we have access to the guts of the pump. When we go to change the O-ring on the head seal, we can see what we're doing inside the pump to make sure that everything stays where it's supposed to be, which is pretty important for keeping the pump together. So Robbie's going to take the upper timing cover off, and he's going to use a cam sprocket holding bar to rotate the engine until the pump is on cam. This is the.
You can use this, one of these, or Metal Nerd sells one that's similar, or you can use a 19mm 12-point half-inch drive socket on the crankshaft pulley bolt to turn the engine clockwise. So let me get this in here. And the idea here is that we're trying to watch this until this cam plate portion moves as far out as it will possibly go in order to maintain adequate spring pressure on the.
This is a cam plate out of the car just to show you that it has 4 bumps on it, 4 cam lobes, and every time it gets up on one of those lobes it puts the whole pump in compression, and that makes it hold together a lot better. So Robbie's moving the motor over, and you can see the pump turning, and you can see the cam plate here come out. And that's what we want, is we want to watch that cam plate. We want to catch it as its furthest extension to the right toward the driver's side of the car.
And that was it.
And that was it. It's starting to go back in, so he's going to move it back a little bit. This loads the pump up. You can see the springs down inside the pump, and it just pushes everything together. So when you pull the pump head out the 1/4 of an inch, it keeps all the guts in here together. Down inside here is a little metal shim that if you go out with the head too far, the metal shim can drop out, and that's pretty much a kiss of death. Or at least if you realize it, that you've dropped the shim out, then you can take the pump out of the car and get it back together, which is beyond the scope of this video. But the whole idea is to keep all this in as much compression as possible by putting the pump on cam, like we showed you before with the holding tool. And being on cam makes it a much safer procedure, so you don't drop out that shim. Can you show us that shim?
I couldn't find it.
Oh, yeah, it's right there.
Okay.
You can see the shim right here. This is the cam plate, and you can see this little tiny shim right there. And I'll let Robbie hold on to that.
The shim sits in the end of the plunger in this recess. There's a drive slot and a drive pin that causes the plunger to move when the cam plate rotates, and those have to sit together and maintain their position relative to each other and not allow the shim to fall out. But I don't want to drop it, so I'm not going to demonstrate. But if you back the pump head too far out of the body, then you've lost your compression here, and you're going to drop that shim.
Yeah, if that shim comes out and you hear anything, or if by putting the head back in you run into resistance, you might have dropped the shim out, and you need to stop what you're doing and figure out how to get the pump out of the car.
Right. Okay, next step, we got to take this, got to take the
Fuel shut-off solenoid.
And I'm using a big socket and a big 1/2 inch, but you can just use a 12.
It's a
24 millimeter wrench.
15/16 also works fine for that. And the only thing to watch out for here is that there's a plunger down inside this hole, and sometimes the plunger sticks down in the hole. There's the plunger right there, and it has an O-ring there at the base, which is in the full Bosch kit, but you rarely need to replace that O-ring. And there's a little spring underneath the plunger, and you just need to make sure that if it comes apart or if the plunger sticks down in the hole, that you pull the plunger out and pull the spring out, and you just put it together, and it's nice and springy. But there's the hole right there, and you have to take this off. When you go to stretch the O-ring over the head, you've got to have that solenoid out of the way so you can get it stretched around the head. It's a really tight stretch even with the solenoid out.
So we got a couple of brackets on this side of the pump that we have to deal with.
So this bracket here, we're going to have to get out of the way.
This is just a 13 millimeter. And it holds the pump to the pump bracket. There's some additional 5 millimeter.
See the 5 millimeter underneath the red cap?
Now there's only one bolt holding this bracket to the pump head at this point, and that's this bolt down here, and it's also holding the pump head to the body. So before I take this one out, I want to go ahead and move this smaller, shorter silver screw to this side. We have another of these silver screws down in this corner, so when we extract the pump head from the body, we want screws in 2 positions, here and here. And so this one has to move over, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. It's also a T30. It has a very shallow head.
You want to make sure and use a good quality
bit
and make sure you're pushed in really tight into this thing, and hold the head of the ratchet when you break it free, because it'll slip out and strip out that head if you don't.
The pump head's not going to move when I do this, because it's got 2 other bolts holding it flush to the body.
Yeah, as long as you have at least one screw, one of the 4 screws holding the head down, the pump head isn't going to move. So you just swap it over to the front side.
And I run it all the way back in. I don't torque it, but I just run it all the way up
This just holds the head in while you remove the other screws.
So now I jump on this one down here. This has a deeper head, so you don't have to be as concerned, but you definitely don't want to strip any of these out because they're fairly crucial. This bracket comes off.
If you do ever strip one of the heads out, you can replace them with just regular Allen screws.